Okay, so we all think we know Halloween, right? The costumes, the candy, the spooky fun. But what if I told you the real story behind it is way deeper and honestly way more surprising than you ever imagined? Let's dig into the hidden history of Halloween.
I mean, really think about it for a second. What on earth connects dressing up in crazy costumes, carving pumpkins, and this whole fascination with ghosts and the dead? Why this one night of the year? It all seems kind of random, doesn't it? Well, it turns out it's not random at all. There's a hidden logic to the whole thing, and today we're going to unlock it.
Right, so when I say Halloween, your brain probably jumps straight to a few things. First up, candy.
Then you've got scares. Haunted houses, horror movies, all that spooky stuff. And of course, parties. The whole shebang. But what if all of that is just the surface? Just faint echoes of a story that's way older and, frankly, way more interesting.
So that's the big question, isn't it? What's the connection? What's the single thread that ties all of these chaotic, fun traditions together? To solve this mystery, we've got to play detective. And it turns out the biggest clue has been hiding in plain sight this whole time.
It's right there in the name. Halloween. See, that's not his full name. It's a contraction. It's short for All Hallows Eve. And that little word, Eve, is everything. It's the key. It tells us that October 31st isn't the finish line. It's the starting pistol for something much, much bigger.
And that's something bigger? It's a mostly forgotten 3-day Christian season called Allhallowtide. And I'm telling you, once you hear about this, the entire Halloween puzzle just snaps into place. Allhallowtide is this special time set aside to remember the dead. We're talking martyrs, saints, and all Christians who have passed on.
Yeah, there's actually a formal name for a 3-day observance like this. It's called a triduum. So get this. Halloween isn't just a single standalone holiday. It's actually day one of a 3-day journey into the Christian understanding of life, death, and what comes next.
So you've got these 3 pillars of the season: the eve, the feast, and the commemoration. Each day has its own distinct purpose, its own vibe, and when you put them all together, they tell one complete story that explains everything from why we wear costumes to why kids go asking for candy.
And this is not some modern invention, by the way. This goes way back. The practice of honoring martyrs started with the very earliest Christians. Then, fast forward to around 731 AD, and Pope Gregory III makes it official. November 1st is All Saints' Day. Then, about 300 years later, around the year 1000, a French abbot, a guy named Odilo, helps make November 2nd a big deal as All Souls' Day. And boom, that's the final piece of the 3-day triduum we now call Allhallowtide.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to break down each of these 3 days, what they actually mean, and how they connect to the traditions we still practice today.
All right, day 1, October 31st, began as the Vigil of All Hallows. Think of it like a night of spiritual preparation, prayer, fasting, that kind of thing. But here's the really cool part. It also had this fascinating, defiant streak. Christians would light these huge bonfires and wear costumes, but, and this is key, not because they were scared. It was to mock the forces of evil. They saw evil as already defeated, so this was like a big, triumphant joke at its expense, to show that its power was broken.
So after the solemn vigil comes the feast. November 1st, All Saints' Day, is a major celebration. This is a super joyful day to honor all the saints in heaven, not just the famous ones you've heard of, but the countless unknown faithful who lived good lives. This is what's known as the Church Triumphant. Traditionally, people visit cemeteries on this day, cleaning graves and decorating them with flowers and candles as a sign of honor.
And that brings us to the final day, November 2nd, All Souls' Day. The mood shifts again here to something a bit more solemn, more personal. This is a day to commemorate all faithful Christians who have died, our own family members, friends, and ancestors. In Catholic theology, this is a day to pray for the souls in purgatory, the church suffering, believing that the prayers of the living can help them on their journey.
Now check this out, because this is where trick-or-treating comes from. Seriously. Back in medieval England, a tradition called souling emerged. The poor would go door to door asking for little pastries called soul cakes. In return, they promised to pray for the family's deceased relatives. A treat in exchange for a service. Sound familiar? The parallel is just unmistakable.
So we have these 3 distinct days: a vigil, a feast, and a commemoration. But what's the core idea that holds them all together?
Well, it's this really beautiful theological concept that makes the whole season perfectly logical.
It's called the communion of saints. And the idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also profound. It's the belief that all Christians, past, present, and future, are bound together in one big spiritual family. That barrier between the living and the dead isn't absolute. There's a connection, a spiritual union, that unites everyone.
And this one idea organizes the entire season perfectly. You can think of Allhallowtide as a massive 3-day spiritual family reunion. All Saints' Day honors the Church triumphant, the saints already in heaven. All Souls' Day is for the Church suffering, those on their journey toward heaven. And All Hallows' Eve? Well, that's for the Church militant. And guess who that is? That's us. The faithful still on earth, holding a vigil and getting ready for the grand celebration.
When you see it this way, the entire meaning of the season just changes. It stops being about celebrating darkness. It becomes this confident, powerful declaration of victory over it.
And this is the really crucial point. You see, ancient pagan festivals around this time of year, like Samhain, were often marked by a sense of fear. The nights were getting longer, the veil between worlds was thought to be thin, and people were wary of the coming winter. Allhallowtide takes that anxiety about darkness and completely flips it. It reframes the season as a confident celebration of eternal life and victory over death.
There's an ancient Christian teaching that just captures the spirit of the season perfectly. The idea is that the remembrance of the dead isn't meant to be a moment of hopeless despair, but rather a confident hope in the resurrection. It's an honest recognition of loss, for sure, but one that is framed by a much greater hope.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway. The costumes, the parties, the visiting of graves, they all point back to this one central message. It's a joyful, defiant, and deeply hopeful declaration that in the end, life wins. Death doesn't get the final say.
So the next time you see a jack-o'-lantern or a kid in a costume, maybe you'll see it a little differently. Not just as a random spooky night, but as the faint echo of a profound 3-day story about life, death, and the defiant hope that connects us all. So now that you know the full story, how will you see Halloween?